Hari Om. Om Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om. Thou art our loving mother. Thou art our compassionate father. Thou art our true friend and constant companion. Thou art our only wealth, and thou art our only wisdom. Thou art all in all. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. I shall try to explain this morning the complete text of the Lord's Prayer. But I'll go summarily what I have already explained to you. In the first place, I wish you to remember that the Lord's Prayer was taught by a divine incarnation who was the embodiment of Godhead. In other words, one who had the supreme illumination, who had realized his oneness with God. And he taught that to his disciples. And these disciples were no ordinary people. These disciples were far advanced. In fact, Jesus, the great illumined master, by his touch, gave that wisdom to these disciples. And this prayer, this Lord's Prayer, was taught to those disciples in aphoristic form. They already knew the implications. They were taught how to meditate, what to do, what to think while meditating. They were taught all that. And this Lord's Prayer in aphoristic form gives the key to those thoughts. Now again, I must explain to you that there are many different classes of people who pray to God. In the Bhagavad Gita, we learn how there are 4 classes of people that devote themselves to God. Not everybody devotes himself to God. The one class is one who is distressed, those who are distressed. They have suffering, they are distressed, they find no way out of that suffering, so they pray. And that is the petitional prayer, in order that they can remove their suffering, they can be free from their sufferings. Then there is another class. They are seeking for wealth, success, comfort, health. You see, something they lack, and they try to gain something materially in this world, but they become frustrated, they become defeated in their pursuit. Then they pray to God. That is one class of people. Then there is another class who are seeking for knowledge, seeking for the truth of God. They are inquiring into it in a cold scientific manner. I want to know if there is any reality in the universe. Then there is the highest class of people. They are those who have known that God is. They are not inquiring if God is. They know God is. And they also know that everything else in the world is so transitory, so ephemeral. So they have that spiritual discrimination unfolded, developed in them, and they know God alone is real. And they seek God, and God only. Now, there's nothing wrong in the other classes of people who pray to God. It's no criticism against them. As in the Gita we read, noble indeed are all these souls. They are all great. Why? To pray to God is noble. No matter why you pray and how you pray and what you pray for. But to think of God, that is the greatest thing in life. My master once told me, blessed are those moments, and blessed are those moments only when your mind is dwelling in the thought of God. Those are the blessed moments. No matter how you approach, with what motive, with what purpose you approach, it does not matter. But pray. Then Sri Krishna in the Gita points out that how those who pray realizing that I am the only reality, they are my very self. You see, they are the dearest one. You know, in life, for instance, if there are two friends, if you ask your friend or if you are friend to your friend because you expect something from him, you know, of course he will give you. But he will think he is friendly because he wants something from me. But if you are friend, if you give your love and you ask for nothing, naturally, that friend considers you as his dearest. Same way with God also. So those who come to God for God's sake are the noblest of all, are the dearest of God. Now again in this connection, let me make the distinction that there are really two classes of prayer. One is petitional prayer, and that I might call it anthropocentric. You are approaching God in order to enrich your life on earth. But you know what happens? As you approach God, then you forget this earth. That's what happens. That's why Sri Krishna says that noble indeed are all those. Let them somehow pray to God. But from our standpoint, I'm pointing out the distinction that one is the anthropocentric, that this human life is the most important life. And to enrich this human life is the purpose of life. But they have not yet known and realized the goal, the purpose of human life. Then the other class, or the other kind, is theocentric. They seek God for God's sake. They know that the purpose and ideal of life is to evolve or to unfold the divinity that is within us. It is the man in us that is creating all suffering and misery in life and all limitations. That man is to be killed in a way. The old man must die. God alone can remain. And that is the theocentric way. And here, this prayer is theocentric. Here, no prayer for enriching your human life, but it is the prayer that you may become absorbed in the consciousness of God, knowing Him to the source of happiness, joy, freedom, life. In Him alone is life, in Him alone is happiness, In Him alone is freedom. Knowing that, you approach Him. Now let us begin the prayer. But again, another thought comes to my mind. In order to be a real spiritual aspirant, I think I have said that. But in order to be a spiritual aspirant, let me repeat, no theology is needed. You see, the general tendency of man is to seek everything outside of himself. You want to be spiritual. So, you want to read philosophy, theology, beliefs. And then you become confused. This religion talks this way, that religion talks that way. There is this theology, that theology. One becomes confused. But if you're a spiritual aspirant, you have to understand that no theology is needed, no philosophy is needed. Just two hypotheses, if I can call them hypotheses. One is to know that God is. Another is that He can be realized. I can know Him. I can find my union with Him. These are the two basic hypotheses. Forget everything else. You don't have to study anything more. But if you have that awareness that God is, and He can be known and realized, and I can know Him. Others have known Him, and I can know Him. That's all there is to it. Now let us try to understand the prayer. Our Father. You see, which art? There's no question here. Because Christ, He is God. Because He has realized His oneness with God. He is the Son of God. He is aware of that. You see, you are also sons of God. You are also sons and daughters of God. There are daughters here also. So you are children of God. Only you don't know it. That's the difference. Because there is nothing but God. Only you don't know. But if you come to the presence of a Christ, there is no question. No question arises. God is or God is not. You see, God is unfolded, is manifest in them. As you approach that presence, you feel you have no question. Now, at one time, what one great saint said. He said, now look here, if I have to prove that God is, see, he was himself a great saint. But still, he was not saying that about himself. But he said about himself this way, if I have to prove to you about God, I have to give you logical reasons, scientific proofs, and then also I shall fail to convince you. But you come to a Christ, and He will show God is, and He will show you that God is. There will be no more any question. So it's Christ speaking, remember, and to His disciples. And we must have that faith. Our Father, which art, God is. And again, before we approach God, we must feel His nearness. And so, He is our Father. You see, our earthly father is a distant relative. Our real Father is He. So that nearness we have to feel. Our Father which art in heaven. Where is that heaven? What did Christ teach? Neither shall they say, lo here or lo there. For behold, mark the word, for behold, the kingdom of God is within you. You see, when you think of heaven, our Father which art in heaven, you look up. What a wrong teaching. Christ didn't teach that. Christ didn't say, look up. Look within. Behold, the kingdom of God is within you. Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Here we find that the secret had been taught to the disciples. They had been initiated with what we call mantra, holy name of God. But that is just like a seed. As you read in the Bible, the seed is the word. You see, that mantra, the name of God, holy name of God. And the name and the indicator are one and the same. But as you repeat the prayer, the mantra, as you chant the name of the Lord, you begin to feel, it's an experience that comes, that the name is hallowed, is sanctified, is alive, full of consciousness, one with God. You see, that is an experience that comes. So, hallowed be thy name. You know, this reminds me of a beautiful prayer of Sri Chaitanya. Some of you are quite familiar with that prayer. And those who are not, I'd advise you to be familiar with that prayer. One of the most beautiful prayers that I know. Chant the name of the Lord and his glory unceasingly, that the mirror of the heart may be wiped clean, and quenched that mighty forest fire, worldly lust raging furiously within. O name, stream down in the lotus heart, opening its cup to knowledge of thyself. O self, drown deep in the waves of his bliss, chanting his name continually. You see, really, as you do that, that bliss does come. You are filled with joy and happiness and bliss. And then you realize how his name is hallowed. So here is the prayer. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. You see, when you go to pray and meditate, you don't have to pray up in the sky. He is within and he's already there. And feel thy kingdom come. Feel yourself in the presence of God. You know, in all our lives, in all your lives, we have seen nothing but God. All the time we are seeing God. Only we don't know. Break this illusion. And thy kingdom come. Feel that presence of God. You see, in one moment, I tell you, in one moment, just with the wink of the eye, as it were, this whole illusion, this whole ignorance may vanish. Because already there, already an accomplished fact, an accomplished a truth that is there. Only there's a covering, thin veil of ignorance. Remove that ignorance, see God. And it can happen in the wink of an eye. You know, there's a saying of Swami Vivekananda, the room may be dark for centuries. How long does it take to remove that darkness? One strike of a light. Similarly, it does happen. The whole illusion breaks. And when you go to pray, feel that thy kingdom come. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. You see, then earth and heaven have become united. You know, I have heard a great saint chant sometimes. I can't chant that way. So sweet when you chant. I give you this English translation. Mind is God, heart is God, intellect is God, senses are God, all is God. You see, we have usurped the throne of God. That's the whole difficulty. That's the whole ignorance. You are God. God is dwelling within you. He is the ruler of your heart. He is the ruler of your city of a body. He is the ruler of that kingdom that you call yourself. But you have usurped. I, this ego, has usurped the throne of God. My mind, my senses, my body, my property, my this. No. God is the inner ruler. He is the inner dweller within you. And all is His, nay, He is all. Just because of that ignorance, that hiding, covering us, and we have thought, we think ourselves to be somebody separate, somebody, some individual, Mr. So and so or Mrs. So and so. And so I have my body, I have my senses, I have my mind, I have my possessions, I have my name, I have my fame, I have my honor. And you are at a loss, my dear friend, when you go on I and I and I. No, God is the dweller. God. So then is it, you see, try to feel that you are nobody. God is. Thy kingdom come. Earth and heaven have become one. Thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Now, in that connection, I explained to you how only when you have really experienced God, when you have experienced that kingdom of God, then you become an instrument in the hands of God. And you do His will. But in our state of ignorance, you see, we can try to do His will, but in what way? By keeping our ego in the background. You see, when you do the will of God, and in every action, in everything, you must try to do the will of God. And you will be able to do the will of God. You will be really an instrument in the hands of God, even while you are still in ignorance. If you can keep yourself a little down on the background. And what does that mean? Forget about your selfish cravings and desires. Cravings and desires that are selfish. You see, if you do your selfish desire and craving go to fulfill and call it the will of God, you are just deceiving yourself, you are not deceiving God. So forget your selfish cravings and desires and do the Lord's will. Give us this day our daily bread. See, bread, as I have already explained to you, is the grace of God, the divine grace. And as I said to you, that by the wink of an eye, the whole illusion can break. And you come face to face with the reality, with God. And so you have to have that faith. And so, when you pray, give us this day, this moment, our daily bread, thy grace. You see, the grace of God is there upon everybody. But there's a saying which my master quoted to me. I was a bad boy. He said, there is the grace of Guru, there is the grace of God, there is the grace of God's devotees, but for the lack of the grace of one, you are ruining yourself. What is that one? Your own mind. Grace of your own mind. So that is the fact. There is the grace of God, but our mind is a rascal mind. And that rascality has to be stopped. The mind has to have its grace. So, again, you have to have some struggle, you see. Self-struggle. There's a saying of Sri Ramakrishna, the breeze of grace is blowing, set your sail to it. That is the thing. And you know, it is the experience of everybody who has prayed even a little. He will tell you that if you move one step towards God, He moves down 10 steps towards you. Such is His grace. He's waiting for us. So move one step towards Him. Make a little struggle. Of course, you see, you have to desire for it, long for it. And who can long for it? Your mind. And that is why, again, you know, in every spiritual, every great saint has given spiritual disciplines to control your mind. If you are a slave to your mind, you can never be happy. You know, those who think that whatever desire or impulse arises in their heart and mind, they must fulfill. You see, they can't be happy because they are serving this slavishness. They are just are slavish to their own minds. They are serving the whims of their uncontrolled, unregenerate mind. And what happens? They are all the time restless. And can anybody be happy by being restless? You see the point. Psychology. Deep psychology is there. We all want to be happy. But do you think by expressing our impulses, our passions, by fulfilling them, we can be happy? Because they would make us more and more restless. And can the restless mind ever find what happiness is? So in the Gita there is that beautiful passage. Only one who is meditative can alone find happiness. And the mind does not wish to meditate. But you have to force the mind. You know, even those of you who have learned how to practice and how to meditate, those of you who have learned, well, you find how you become lazy at times. And I hope not most of the time. Oh, not today. Not now. I'll go in the evening. You see, the mind dictates to you. The mind does not want. And then when one goes to meditate, the mind is distracted, full of distractions. But follow the disciplines. Patiently, perseveringly. It is dry at the moment, yes. But follow. And the secret is real joy in prayer and meditation you get the moment you become concentrated. And how can you become concentrated? By repeated struggle. That is the secret. There is no other magic, no other secret. And you will feel it if you struggle for a little while, that how the moment mind becomes absorbed a little, what delight. You don't wish to give up then. And forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Now, debts are the debts of karma, what we call the law of karma. Now, let me remind you of what I already explained to you. As we forgive our debtors, you see, as we live in the society, as we live with friends and people and relatives and in our social behavior, there is we affect others and we are affected by others. That is the law. You know, it is just like this. We affect the whole of mankind. It's a very deep psychology, of course. Our thoughts, our actions affect the whole mankind. And the mankind and everybody's thoughts and actions affect the rest. That is the law. Just like, to give an illustration, suppose there's a lake and you throw a little pebble. You see, it affects the whole lake. Same way, on the lake of the cosmic mind, as it were, we are so many small bits of minds. And our thoughts and actions affect in that cosmic mind, and they get it. No, there is a saying that there is no thought that is original or new. That is the truth. All thoughts are thought out. They are in the atmosphere. You catch them. You get them. So you open yourselves to good. By thinking good and holy thoughts, you open yourself to all the good influences, the thoughts of the saints of the past, and they do remain in the atmosphere. Thoughts of the past and of the present. And you are helped. You know, at one time I complained to my master, well, you give us teachings and then let us struggle and plod along. You don't help us anymore. He said, how do you know we don't help you? Are you doing what I asked you to do? If you do, you will find that help. And that is the truth. That is the fact. You'll get that help. You'll receive that help from every saint of God. Same way again, the other way. You open yourself to evil thoughts and you'll be surprised how evil, how diabolical evil thoughts may enter into you. That's the fact. That's what happens in everybody's life if you open yourself to this way or that way. And so we are affected by others and we affect others. Then again, you see, of course, we must not blame others. That is the human tendency. You see, as I told you some other time, that how from the very origin of this universe, well, according to the Christian doctrine, how Adam put the blame on Eve and Eve put the blame on the serpent. So you are always putting the blame upon another. And that we must not do. It is our karma. You see, our way of thinking again that opens ourselves to being influenced by good or bad. And so do not hold any ill feeling towards anybody. And in your prayer and meditation, if you have ill feeling towards anybody, that, you see, you cannot approach God. Because the moment you try to approach God, that ill feeling becomes intensified. So first be reconciled in your heart. And then in your life, do not have ill will towards anybody. Pray for everybody. You see, in life, of course, sometimes you will find there is somebody that you resent very much. You can't help it. That resentment comes. And there, try to overcome that resentment. And the simple way to overcome such a resentment is to pray. Pray for that person. As you pray, love grows in your heart for that person. And the resentment goes away. And that person also will be changed by you, by your attitude. You see, we can bring out the best in one or the worst in the other. It all depends on us. Now, here again is the prayer: forgive us our dates. In other words, free us from this wheel of karma. You see, I would not go into the law of karma. I have explained to you many times, perhaps. But there is this wheel of karma, and we remain within that wheel, and we remain subject to birth, death, and rebirth. And only it is the knowledge of God, that illumined knowledge of God, that can wipe out all karmas. In the Gita we read, karma jnane parisamapyate. All karma is ended or is burned by the fire of knowledge. In the Upanishads we read this: this vast universe is a wheel. Upon it are all creatures that are subject to birth, death, and rebirth. Round and round it turns and never stops. It is the wheel of Brahman. As long as the individual self thinks that it is separate from Brahman, it revolves upon the wheel in bondage to the laws of birth, death, and rebirth. But when, through the grace of Brahman, it realizes its identity with him, it revolves upon the wheel no longer. It achieves immortality. And so here is the prayer: free us from this debt of karma. In other words, give us that knowledge. Then, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Now let me first try to consider what this evil is. That the prayer is to deliver us from evil. You see, here we come to the climax of the prayer, as it were. What is the evil? In the succeeding line is pointed out. The evil is the ignorance. We have forgotten that thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. You see, as I pointed out, that we have usurped the throne of God. And we have forgotten that it is thine, that thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Now, and from that, from such ignorance, all kinds of temptations have arisen. And lead us not into temptation. You see, how can God lead us into temptation? Because it is God's creation. This whole universe has come out of God. And this whole universe is in Him. And He is everywhere in the universe. But what is this temptation then? There's ignorance. You see, delivers us from the evil. That ignorance is there. And what is that ignorance? In the first place, the ego asserts itself and sees the appearance of the universe. You see, we are born in that ignorance. And so as we come into this universe, we see the appearance of the universe. Now there's a beautiful passage in the Bhagavad Gita which explains, how hard to break through is this my Maya made of the gunas. But he who takes refuge in me only shall pass beyond Maya easily. It is his Maya. He is ignorant. He has put this ignorance. Why? Of course we don't know. But why should he put ignorance? It's we again brought that ignorance into ourselves. because of our karmas. But of course, these three gunas, those are the three energies, the powers that make this universe. This whole universe is an unfoldment of the three types of energies of God called Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. They are one with Him, yet He is not. He transcends them. He is not affected by them. That's His Maya. And it is because of that Maya again, you see, we are subject to these three gunas. What are these three gunas? Let me only explain to you the makeup of the mind, the body, the senses, this what you call this solid ground, all made up of gunas. We see it so solid, but it's nothing but energy, power, solidified or liquidified. And that also is the mind. And these are there are three types of gunas. You see, perfectly in accord with the findings of modern science. Now, of course, if we consider the makeup of the mind also is made up of these three gunas, three kinds of energies, three types of energies. One is called sattva. Its expression is tranquility, calmness. Another is rajas, restlessness, passions, activity. Another is tamas, that's laziness, lethargy. You see, these are the three types of energies. And in our lives, the one or the other becomes predominant. Sometimes you are very happy, tranquil, calm. Again, you are restless, passionate. Again, you are so sleepy and lethargic and lazy. You see, these three types alternately controlling our mind. And so, those three gunas again come from God. But they are not bad by themselves. It is the way we attach ourselves to them, identify ourselves with them, and that's why we suffer. The Atman, God within, your true self, is transcending these gunas, but you identify yourself with these gunas. And that is the temptation. For instance, when the mind is calm and quiet, you identify yourself with it. Oh, I'm calm, I'm tranquil. Then again, there's a wave of misery in the mind. Oh, I'm so miserable. Again, there is a wave of lethargy or laziness in the mind. Oh, I feel so lazy. So you are subject to these three, to the whims of these three gunas. In other words, you are subject to the whims of the mind, and the mind again is subjected by these three gunas. And because you identify yourself with these three gunas, you want to enjoy. You want this, you desire for that, you have craving for that or this. So it says, how hard to break through is this my Maya made of the gunas. So this whole creation is also made of the gunas. My mind is made of the gunas, my senses and body made of the gunas. What is the real nature of these three gunas? Nothing but the power, energy of God. But we do not recognize that. We have usurped the throne of God. And as such, there are temptations everywhere. I want to fulfill my passion. So I run after objects and things and persons. Through that identification, suffering and misery arises. Whereas there is a fullness within me if I go to God. And you see, in fact, what happens, there is that fullness in us. And because of the identification with the gunas, and because of looking at this universe, the appearance of the universe, We have lost that fullness, as it were. And there is the struggle, the attempt to reach that fullness. In other words, perfection is your birthright. You are complete in Godhead, and that Godhead is within you. That is your very nature. And there is perfection everywhere because there is the kingdom. It is the kingdom of God, the power and glory of God everywhere. But because of that ignorance and forgetfulness and identification, things appear differently. We begin to misread everything. But there is that urge to unfold that infinite perfection. And we think we can satisfy or express that perfection in the finite. Then we become frustrated. Then we come to God. And so, how do we overcome these three gunas and this frustration? He who takes refuge in me only shall pass beyond Maya easily. It is easy to cross this illusion, to go beyond this illusion, if we only devote ourselves to God. You see, there is a passage in the Upanishads. From joy springs this universe. In joy exists this universe. Unto joy goes back this universe. That is the true nature of this universe. Because from Him everything has come. But we do not see that joy. We do not see God. But we see this appearance. And we take this appearance as reality. Our ego is but a shadow, nothing else if you analyze. But that shadow we hold as a reality. And the shadow playing on shadows. Where can you find the light? So go within. There is the light, the truth, the way. Seated, dwelling within your own heart. Go to Him. Then what do you find? For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. There is a complete realization there. All is Brahman. Om Hari Om. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya. Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Abir Maeti. Rudrajatte Dakshinang Mukham. Tatte Namang Pahi Nityam. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from death to immortality. Lead us from darkness to light. Light us through and through, and guide us evermore with thy loving presence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace.